10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Welcome to CultureCast, the podcast that focuses on culture in its broadest sense, from putting people back at the heart of organisational culture through to the seismic shifts taking place in society every single day. My name is Vimla and I'm the co-founder of Honey Badger, a UK business that focuses on designing and delivering measurable change to organisations through experience and culture. Today on the podcast we have Mbako, a truly inspirational person who talks about her career change from banking into design and technology, and the difference in culture that she's seen along the way. Annie tells her story, and with it, the subtle differences in various working cultures and how they've impacted her as a person and her career. In this podcast, we talk about the links between our clothes and the psychology of colour, as well as how our behaviour can influence the people around us. Annie does an incredible job of opening up about different cultures and different environments, and explains why agile methodologies are changing her outlook to work. I haven't done this podcast justice. Give it a listen and leave with a deeper understanding of the world of culture and work. Hi everyone, I'm here today with Annie Mbako, a good friend of mine who I work with at Diverse and Equal, but also who I know from the tech community in Manchester. Annie, would you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. So as Vim has already alluded to, I'm kind of based within the tech community in Manchester. I'm actually new. I started out my career in banking. I decided a few years ago to transition over to the tech industry. And now I find myself mainly working in Diverse and Equal and trying to help other people also get into the tech industry. But I'm still constantly learning a lot myself. And yeah, I just found it fascinating. One thing that I discovered once I tried to get in is I just assumed that the tech industry was diverse and there weren't any issues, which it is diverse, it is to some extent. But yeah, I found that there's a lot of work to be done. I'm actually learning a lot and also being exposed to agile ways of working, which we're not used to in the banking world, or we weren't back in the day. It's been a very steep and interesting learning curve for me, but I'm loving it.
Amazing, thank you. And what was it that sparked the move from banking to tech?
Really, the main thing was that I was seeing a lot of activity in the local community in Manchester in terms of meetups. I started going to meetups myself and meeting all these cool people who were saying a lot of things that I didn't understand. But it was really, I think, a difference in culture. The culture or cultures that I was used to, types of cultures that you would find in a typical big company, a multinational corporation. So I was used to doing things in a certain way. And I'd never really had any other exposure to other industries, not proper exposure anyway. So it was great when I was going to meetups, sometimes meeting senior people, and they were wearing jeans and just relaxed and just speaking in plain English. I mean, that was a real shock for me. It was great because I could see, it was great to see some people. You could tell that they were very intelligent, sometimes doing very technical work. But when it came to speaking to people, to the outside world, they were really relaxed and really friendly. And I didn't necessarily expect that. And I was embraced. I'm quite lucky, actually, because I was embraced by the community leaders that I met throughout the time. So yeah, I think I always say that I had a red carpet rolled out for me in some ways as a newcomer. And that was really, really encouraging. So I'm not saying that you wouldn't necessarily get that in banking, but it's quite different. The experience I've had previously was there was a lot of competition and you had to come pretty much polished. And there were things that you couldn't help. Like if you'd gone to a particular school or university, yeah, your chances of getting ahead, even in a networking space, was affected by that. And you can't really help that sort of thing. But I felt a bit more free within the tech industry. So I decided to take a chance while I was still comfortable and jump and give it a go. And it's been great ever since. Not that I would never return back to banking, but I'm not looking to go back in a hurry.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. Do you think that's the same experience for other people trying to join the tech industry or the tech community?
I think generally, yes. Obviously, it does depend on where they join, because some people do go into the tech industry, but they're actually still working in a big corporate. But I would say even within those spaces, from what I have seen, tech teams, even within the corporate space, have got a different culture compared to the rest of the company. So yeah, from speaking to people who are rolling in now, people who've gone before me, it is generally a bit of a sigh of relief, and we're happy just to get some. It feels like we're more free. It's easier to transition from one discipline to another, and there's a lot more of a flat structure, which I absolutely love. And yeah, that's one of the things that I love, because I value autonomy so much. And yeah, it just seems to, it does not, doesn't happen everywhere necessarily, but it seems to be a big thing, getting some kind of autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I thrive on autonomy as well, and I think that's what drew me into the tech sector too, was being able to kind of do your own thing without anyone really questioning it, as long as you could get the results you needed or get on with it.
Yeah. And also another thing, actually being able to think about your, your own self. Because I think for the first time in the last few years is when I've really thought about what my skills and attributes are, not having somebody dictate them to me, or just looking at set paths and trying to fit into pathways that don't fit me. Because that's
Mm.
something I realized. I knew it at the time, when I was starting my career. I knew that. I was quite surprised that I lasted that long. I was there for nearly 10 years. Yeah, it's very, very different. I think I find it in the tech world that I've been encouraged anyway to look internally and really get to know myself, and then look at what I can do and actually think about things that I like doing.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, the reality is you just got to do a job to bring in money. And some of the jobs that we do, they bring in a lot more money than others. And that's what drives
Mhm.
you. That's what dictates you, really. So it's a nice thing to be able to do something that you actually like, that fits your personality, that fits your skills and interests. And it's nice to have the flexibility to be able to change from one to another.
And do you think that kind of focus on yourself and the things that make you happy is unique to the tech industry?
I don't think so. I think I just didn't, there wasn't that much happening in terms of that side in the banking industry, because, as I said, you can always follow your heart and just do what you want. But at the end of the day, there is a great disparity between different subsectors of the banking and finance, and between different jobs. So sometimes people's ambitions are actually driven by prestige, money, power, or it could be autonomy, or whatever you need at work, as opposed to doing things that you actually really, really want to do. So I don't think the tech industry is the only industry. I mean, I'd love to believe that it can't be the only industry where you're encouraged to be yourself. And I think that's got to do with really how creative people have to be in order to produce their best work. So I would like to imagine that in some creative industries anyway, or any industry where creativity is key, yeah, people would be focusing a lot more on what they love or what they can't do, because that's something that you cannot fake, really. With some jobs, you can go in and just do what it says on the tin, or follow set instructions, or work within certain parameters, and you'll still do great. But yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with that autonomy. The more free you are to be the person who you really, really are, that's when you can achieve greater things, and I guess flourish in the company, or, whoever you're working for or working with, everything flourishes that way, because there's a lot more freedom. Yeah, but it's not only in the tech industry. I'm sure there are others. It's just that I don't personally know.
Yeah, I love that though. I love the way you put it there. Of once you have that sense of self, you flourish. Everything flourishes because
Yeah.
it sparks your creativity. It fuels you. So on that note, what does culture mean to you?
For me, when I hear the word culture, what I think about is really how we do what we do. And I emphasize on the word how, because sometimes we can go about doing the same thing or with the same aim, but we just do things in different ways. And things that come to mind are like based on cultural experiences, based on the way that we've been brought up, based on really family support, because that's something that's very important to me as a Cameroonian, as an African. It's really, really important. So yeah, when I think of culture, it is based on how do we do what we do, but it's also how you've experienced the world that influences how you do what you do. That's how I like to think of it in that sense. And I always think about work. I don't know why. When you say culture, always
Yeah.
think about work, but that applies to life in general. It isn't just work.
Well, I think it's the other way around. I think life applies to work because those experiences, everything that makes you you, being Cameroonian, like family values, influences the way you experience or act at work, whether we intend it to or not. And I don't think as a society we give ourselves enough time to think about that because we have this culture at home and then we're put into work and it's all of a sudden no, you don't think about any of that stuff. You don't think about the party at the weekend or whatever it might be. You kind of have to leave that at the front door and walk into this homogenous thing where everyone's expected to act and think the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, that brought back memories just as when you were talking. That brought back so many memories. Yeah, because I can remember sometimes in teams in work when I was working, yeah, it really was like that. Or I didn't sometimes feel comfortable to bring my whole weekend over into work. It just felt like it was too much. It's strange actually, because now with any team that I work with now, I don't feel like that. I don't feel as if I have to shield my weekend or choose which part to expose or not. I don't I don't feel as if there are going to be any repercussions. Whereas back then, there were some teams that I've been through, and I went through quite a few teams where, yeah, I just didn't feel comfortable, or as we used to say, it wasn't part of the game. Yeah, there was a game to be played, and that just wasn't part of the game.
Wow. Where do you think that came from?
I think that was a culture that's been inherited through time. I don't know exactly from who, but I guess the teams had people, there were people who had worked within the industry for decades. They'd started working in the 70s, in the 80s, way back when things were very different. And even though things have changed, it's quite hard to change the way that someone works. Yeah, they're either flexible or they're not. And I think it's also with the structure in terms of hierarchy on the team, senior people, that whatever they dictate the culture really. So yeah, they can make it comfortable or uncomfortable or possible to share your weekend without people judging you, for example, or not. Yeah, it's really, I think, the hierarchical element of, yeah, the structure. It really, really affects what happens on the team. And there can also be really strong personalities as well. But usually it's from the bosses. In that sort of structure, it is most of the time the bosses or whoever has power on the floor.
Mm. Do you think they realised the impact they were having?
Oh, absolutely not. With some of them, absolutely not. Because in some instances, people are too scared to challenge, and with good reason, because it may have affected reviews, it may have affected anything positive that they would have gotten further down the line. And yeah, I think they were subconsciously aware that there would be biases, in terms of, what's this word? I used to always joke with people, use the word insubordination, which to me, it sounds crazy now. I haven't said it for a long time, but that's what it's classified as sometimes when you challenge people when you're in a hierarchy. And it depends how someone takes your challenge, or you pointing out something, not even necessarily a challenge, but just giving feedback and saying, this is how you are. Yeah, if they really have a lot of power and, nothing is going to change, what is the point? I don't know. It's quite a big risk to speak up, I'd say. So yeah, that doesn't happen that often. I think, yeah, people who spoke up found themselves either stagnated or, very quickly moved on somewhere else.
When you see that happening as part of the team as well, it stops you from speaking out if you did think things were wrong as well, because you see the repercussions, you see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a very strong person or someone with a very secure position to actually open their mouth and say something, to stand up or say that it's wrong. And it took me a while, actually. This is why I say I'm surprised that I survived in some environments on some teams for as long as I did, because I hate a confrontation, especially when I started working. I absolutely would just do anything to avoid it. Yeah, and coming from a background where I actually studied biomedical science in uni and working in the lab, that really wasn't my experience at all. If you had something valuable to say, the professors or the researchers would listen to you regardless of what rank you were. I'm sure there's hierarchy in science as well, but it really, really was not the same. As long as you had some evidence or something to back up what you were saying, it was easy to speak up. Yeah, that isn't the case necessarily at work, and it's complicated, but there are loads of different factors that affect how comfortable people are
Yeah.
speak up. And there's not that kind of mechanism where you are necessarily asked for your opinion. That depends very much on the leadership of a team and how they make the team work.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
why I love agile, or the whole concept of agile, so much.
I can feel it. I can feel the love. That's a really interesting career history, though. So you went from biomedical science to banking to tech. What kind of led you from biomedicine
Yeah,
to,
so
to
I
banking?
oh gosh, I didn't even make it to working in the lab properly. That career kind of ended in uni. And funny thing is, I got feedback that I was very talkative in the lab. And anyone that knows me knows that I'm not I'm not talkative at all. It's just I didn't have the patience to wait for cells to grow and for things to happen, because it's very, very slow. When I chose my degree, I wanted to be a CSI. I'd watched far too much TV and I thought it was going to be really interesting, exciting, sexy. And it was interesting. I loved learning everything that I loved, but the reality of work, real work, was, it just didn't suit me. And I looked around, and I think banking was something that it just came about because loads of people around me were doing it. I knew some people in the family we were in, so I jumped in. So I tried retail banking and quickly discovered that I didn't like it. And then I ended up in investments completely by accident. And it was an exciting time. I say exciting time, it was actually terrible. So I got my job just in the middle of the last credit crunch. So it was 2008, while it was still happening, while all the turmoil was still happening, and there was a lot of work to be done. And I was just grateful to have a job, and to have a job in something that I didn't study, didn't really know, and my people skills and analytical skills were valued. So that's why I went in. It was an open door where really they, took people with degrees, without degrees, with different degrees. You didn't have to have an economics or a maths degree.
Amazing. I would have never put the two together. It makes sense now that you explained it. We've spoken a lot about what's good with the tech industry at the moment and the culture there, particularly. But what do you think is wrong with the culture in tech at the moment?
I still think, despite having, I guess, a structural backbone of agile to lean on, one thing I see is that people are perhaps not intentional, really. There's a difference between wanting a great culture or wanting more diversity, et cetera, and actually doing something about it. And I think a whole agile framework or way of working, it lends itself really greatly to having a great culture. But if, I guess, the specific ways that people work every day, if that isn't thought of, if it isn't reviewed and looked at constantly, people can easily fall into traps and suddenly end up, with places where you have a huge revolving door or some big disaster happens and you have a PR or issue on your hands because of the culture, or people all of a sudden just wake up and realize that it's not that great a place to work. So that's one thing I would say to people. It doesn't matter which industry, to be fair, but you need to be intentional. Just because you have all the great ingredients or the right ingredients to have a good workplace culture or for things to be great, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. If they're not mixed or they're not applied in the right way, it will not happen. And that comes from in having the intention to look. And unfortunately, there is no manual that we can give people. Different businesses are different. They're going to work differently. Different things are going to work within them. So it's about really understanding what your people want. What do you want as a business? Which direction do you want to go in? And trying things and finding out how you can make them work. And also being able to hold your hands up and admit when it's not working. Because that's something that a lot of places don't do, at least not externally. They do not do. Yeah, it's kind of one of my pet peeves. I do see more people doing it in the tech industry than anywhere else, I have to say. And that may be because of the way that the cultures are. In order to, I guess, do things in the ideal way, there are going to be mistakes made. There's got to be a little bit of experimentation, but also just admitting when something doesn't work so that you can stop doing it and move on and try something else. That's really, really important. Really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think that intent piece is so crucial to designing a good culture, because I think what used to happen a lot in, like you say, in a lot of industries was the culture or the values would just get written on the wall and they'd be used as PR or marketing, or, that it's what people would get excited about in an interview. And then you'd land and it was like Groundhog Day. And, it was working 24 hours a day for nothing and all of this stuff. And I actually think the tech industry falls victim to that quite a lot, with the bro culture and Silicon Valley culture that's infiltrated without anyone questioning if it's the right culture for their company yet. And I think that shows its head in how we see beanbags in offices when really no one uses them, or ping pong tables that are distracting, or all of this stuff that actually isn't what people wanted. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's true. When you say that, I don't know if this is a trend, but I know that before I left, I could see a wave of big corporates who, some of them had a big tech arm, some of them didn't. They were also absorbing that bro culture and trying to be more cool, really following the tech industry. So they brought in ping pong tables, well, brought in, bean bags, specific areas. There's some offices that I've been to where an entire floor feels like a playground.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's nothing wrong with that, but I was just trying to think when I walked in, I was like, how do they get any work done? How do they do it? Because I know certainly I used to sit not far from the ping pong table at work. I think I used it like once or twice, but I only used it because I was trying to have a conversation with someone and I knew that they wouldn't leave that table. It's great. It's great for that. I know it brought a lot of relief for some people, but I am wondering, how many, because that's something I wasn't there for long enough to see the effects, and maybe those questions weren't being asked, but how many people actually use those tables? Something else that got brought up when the office got renovated and all these things changed was that we didn't really consider as a business the effect that it would have on people who are neurodiverse. Because even something like having carpet tiles that had different patterns, quite a lot of people complained about that. And the lighting, a lot of people complained about how bright it was. And we didn't know that it was going to happen. Although, I guess whoever designed it was just thinking, this is going to be great. We have new bright colors. It's going to look cool.
Mhm.
It's going to go away from that gray, kind of dusty office look, which is good. But yeah, not much consideration into how is it going to affect people. And you know what happened actually? Some of these people with their neurodiversities, they didn't actually declare them to management. And I remember at the time, because I was chairing one of the multicultural networks and we were working together with all the other employee networks, and we actually had people approach us first because they were afraid. They didn't know who to tell, how to tell management or HR that they just can't do a hot desk, or they can't sit somewhere where the carpet tile is blue and yellow or grey, a whole mixture. They can't do it. So how do they get up and do that? So yeah, that's an eye opener. That something even as simple as an office renovation, actually, everybody needs to be considered.
It's really interesting you bring that up because it's one of the pitfalls of open plan offices as well, that the trend for everything to be open plan just doesn't work for
No.
everyone. And it amazes me that that still isn't being questioned or designed out. Like there aren't any new ways of rethinking that I see people implementing anyway. It's
That's really sad to hear, because I would have thought, I mean, I'm not a designer, but I would have thought there would have been a solution by now. Because I remember when I don't think I had that much of a problem with the open plan office. But one thing I used to do a lot is that when I needed quiet me time, because I worked on a team it was client facing, we were on the phones constantly. If I needed me time, I actually booked a meeting room so I could just be alone with no phone. And thank goodness that I was able to do that. But what if half the building was full of people like me? Maybe it was, and maybe they didn't feel comfortable enough to not be at their desk for an hour. But there has to be a better solution. And I don't know, maybe this working from home and lockdown is part of the answer to it, but that there has to be a better solution, because I wouldn't class myself as neurodiverse. I'm not sure that I fully have understood, how I react to working in an open plan office. But even for me, I would find sometimes it might be my introversion. Sometimes I just need quiet, dead silence, and I need to see nobody, and I need to not have phones or flashing lights or anything. I don't want to speak to people. And there's got to be space or something that, people like me, that once in a while we can just escape to and be in a corner. But yeah, maybe lockdown or working from home might be the answer for that. I'm not sure.
there's definitely I'm a self-classified introvert as well, and there's something for me of people sitting behind me. I can't sit facing a door or with my back to a door, and I couldn't sit with people. I find it really difficult to sit with people behind me. And so if you're in an open planned office, that's almost unavoidable. And I really struggled. I don't know what it was. It just always had me tense. I didn't like it. And I was never able to there was nothing I could do about it either. Like that's just how it was.
And see, this is a shame, because you saying that, you're not unusual. When you say that, I can think of 10 people that I used to work with, even on my floor, who were like that. Some
Yeah.
of them had control of where people sat on the team. So they made sure that they put themselves in a corner where, people weren't passing their back.
Yeah.
But you should be able to, in your teams, there should be at some point, somebody should be asking, if we're going to sit in this corner, does anybody have any preferences? Has anyone got anything, that you need in order to work ideally? And that should be taken into consideration. And if that means that you rotate once in a while with somebody else, then so be it. But it makes your working day or your working days so much better. And it's not hard to do. So I don't understand. I don't understand why that can't be done, why that isn't done as a standard. I mean, I've had great managers who have done that from the start. They've laid out in the first one-to-one, just asked, what do you need to work ideally? And even if you don't know, it's fine. If you want to tell me a few months down the line, that's absolutely fine. But what do you need? Whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, anything, tell me, because I want to know how to manage you. I want to know how to make the workplace better for you or to make you happier so you work at your optimum. It should be something that everyone does. But yeah, for some reason, it doesn't always happen.
No, it really, really doesn't. We've spoken a lot there about the importance of, well, I guess we've covered kind of the importance of being able to talk about the differences and therefore the needs in different environments, but also the importance of that diversity in the team to make those conversations acceptable. Like if you feel like you're the only neurodiverse person on the team, you might feel less comfortable to talk about it. What do you think has influenced that part of tech culture, the kind of need to feel tech, I guess, in a weird way?
Yeah, I think, well, gosh, I guess this may be a bit tough for me because I'm speaking from a position of being outside teams. So my experience is really from other people's stories of working within tech teams. But I think the push for diversity and also maybe realizing the diversity within that already existed. So we spoke briefly about, neurodiversity, but I don't think from what I've heard that there was much consideration being given to people who were on teams that were neurodiverse. They may have been previously just put into one side and branded as you're quiet, you're the geeky quiet one that just sits in the corner. That may not have been the case. So I see a lot more of, people actually trying to investigate or ask questions as to why some people, may not be as interactive within teams, because that's how sometimes it manifests. And also just being considerate. So the people who were always there, they were just, a lot of them were either very quiet or they could have been very, very loud. Yeah, so it's a combination of, looking at the people who are already there, but then push for diversity. So now as there are more career changes going into the tech industry, I guess there's more of a mix of ways of working and personalities that maybe there weren't so many of before, and companies are having to adapt to things, and I guess people having to break down preconceptions of each other. And I just remember a talk that I did a couple of years ago, actually, and it was in a tech firm, but they're quite relaxed. And before I went on stage, someone was talking about how they don't feel comfortable doing talks within a corporate setting because working in tech industry, they can literally wear what they want every day to work, but they felt like they had to wear a suit or dress up, and it was so uncomfortable for them. And I said, I understand, because there were times when, I love bright colors. And if I wore a bright color, I would stand out. And a lot of people would make comments about it. Or if I wore some shoes that were unusual, a lot of people make comments about it because it's quite easy for them to, it's something they can see, they can comment on. And so I'm like, that there are actually people who feel the same way as you. So it doesn't mean that just because, you work in a bank or whatever, that everybody loves wearing suits or they love walking around in grey. Some of us do actually like bright colours. We would love to walk around in Doc Martens, and you can do that these days, actually, if you're not facing a client. But yeah, so that's what I talk about, breaking misconceptions or preconceptions of what actually happens on either side, because we don't know. And now you're getting this crossover of people from different industries, coming together. So that's the thing that I'm seeing. But it's because I'm seeing a lot of new people come into the industry and speaking to them, and then seeing people who are more established and listening to what they're saying. But I think I might have a maybe a slightly different opinion if I'd actually worked within a tech team.
I think it's true. It's really strange as well, because in a really weird way, the tech sector is becoming the corporate sector. Like Facebook, Google are corporates, they're massive corporates, yet they still seem to have this culture that we don't associate with a corporate culture. So there's all of these misconceptions around what it means to work in corporate versus tech, when actually they can be the same thing. It's the culture that's different, not the type of organization. Yeah, I remember making a promise to myself when I left a job a while ago. I think it was my first job out of uni. And I don't know why I had this, because it was never said to me. But I promised myself from then on I would never take a job where I couldn't wear trainers every day, because it's such a like important thing for me to be able to just be comfortable, and I never have. And I don't, it's not intentional. I just never ask. I just always wear trainers. It's what I want. It's how I work best. So
Yeah. See, that's great that you had that, or you prioritize that so early on, because some of us, hands up included, me, we were thinking, honestly, when I first joined here, I was thinking, okay, I will end up in London in a few years. And if I have to wear a suit and heels to do it, it's fine. I can sacrifice. I will do it. But when I look back and I think about it, I learned a lot. I did learn a lot, and I had a lot of great experiences. But sometimes I do wonder, was it worth it? Should I have turned around? Because, funnily enough, since leaving, I haven't really worn my dresses, probably not even touched a suit. The heels that I had, I barely touched them, and I've given most of them away. I love them. They were very comfortable, but I don't really miss them. So I think that confidence that you had to say, whatever it is that you have, such an early stage to say, I will not accept working if I don't have this, that. That's so important. So, so, so important. It's probably easier to do it these days, but yeah, it's really important to have.
it's my millennial entitlement, I think.
See, now you're starting to sound like some of my old bosses. That's what they used to say. When we used to bring some things in, we would rebel and refuse to do certain things. They would, put it down to millennials entitled. You young people don't know, this is not how it was in the day. But I think it's great because you have freedom to wear whatever, as long as your output is what the company expects. That's all that matters. You should be comfortable doing it. Why not? Because you're working really, really hard after all. Yeah. I love dressing up. I do miss it. But yeah, I just wish. I think these days, actually, that's a great thing, actually, that banks have picked up from Silicon Valley as well, or the tech industry, is dress down. Just having dress down, especially if you're not meeting a client. And sometimes even we call it dress down interviews, but all it is doing interviews in jeans and t-shirt, or jeans and a shirt. That's dress down. But yeah, it's great because then it makes the person that you're interviewing know and feel a lot more comfortable that this is something that I can do every day, and I don't have to worry about getting dry cleaning done. Oh
yeah, it's such a antiquated way of thinking. Like, I will tell you what to wear in order for you to work here. Like, as a concept, that's so old school. Like, I hadn't thought about it before until now, like how old a mentality that is.
yeah, and I think, again, this has got to do with the people who control what goes on. So you will find, there are some people, when they started, I remember, they would kind of dress up, but it would be just on the edge. And as you can see them, as soon as they start climbing up the ladder, the further up they go, the more they get into uniform. That's what I call it. They get into uniform and they eventually conform. But it is from the people at the top of, how they're perceived. And also, I think with some industries, your clients don't trust you as much, or at least as a perception, your clients still don't trust you as much if you come in jeans and t-shirt, as opposed to being in a suit and shiny shoes, and tend to control less money. It's a shame, actually. You tend to be able to command less money. But on the flip side, I'm like, why can the tech industry do that? Why can't Mark Zuckerberg be, as
Exactly.
rich as he can? But you see all the other, people in banking, they're still struggling. So I hope that's something that the dress down culture that's happening now every day, that it will actually filter through to well, it probably won't, because some of those people, they've been doing it for decades, and it's a bit too much to ask. But I think in the next 10, 20 years,
Yeah.
we're going to be like, especially with fintechs coming in, because they've changed.
I'm sure no one in Monzo wears a suit.
Maybe a few people.
I agree. I think there is. It's really interesting, the whole impact of fashion on culture, because I definitely have outfits I wear to make me feel confident and powerful. Whereas I know that there are other outfits that will make me feel intimidated. And it is an interesting mentality. And I wonder if that is why that suits and shoes has survived for so long, because it has become synonymous with power and authority in a lot of circles.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember right from the start, even having conversations about this, it's a bit of a struggle point as well, particularly with women, because you don't want to overdo it, but we're very, very aware that there is, if you look at the women that rise up through the ranks into those businesses, a lot of them dress in similar ways. There are certain things that they do. So it's very hard to not do that as well. But there's a lot of talk about like power dressing. It's the thing. We always used to hire psychologists to come in and talk about power dressing, and there was a lot of talk about even your posture and the way that you project your voice, and just to make yourself aware that how you do different things is going to get different reactions from people, and just to be aware of that. So if you do want to climb up the ladder, these are the things that you may want to do once in a while, or think about your personality. How can you do certain things if you're not confrontational? What messages can you send out with either your dressing or your posture without having to raise your voice, for example? Yeah, so that actually the education in terms of self-awareness in those circles is pretty good, because everybody needs to know, you need to know whether you can do it or not. And if you can't, then you find your place elsewhere. But it's also just being aware, because some people are naturally like that and they're not even aware. They're not aware of, why they're a certain way and why it gives them an advantage. So yeah, that's one of the greatest things I actually learned. A lot of investment into psychologists to talk to us and just educate people on what was going on.
Blows my mind, really. It's because, thinking back to you saying the bright colours thing, I have always worn bright colours to work without ever thinking about it, because I like bright colours too. And I know it comes from my heritage and is what people around me grew up wearing. It's just looks good on my skin tone. It's what I wore. And I never thought of the connotations that would give, which I'm sure it did, of young, aloof, text like standard behavior, that kind of stuff, which was completely unintentional on my behalf. But yeah, really, really interesting.
Yeah, on the colours, it's also I think that's also a cultural thing for different people, because I tend to find the people who wore bright colours or even tried, it was because they grew up around that, or whichever country that they were from, people wear bright colours. That is it. Not that bright colours aren't worn in the UK, but certainly within hierarchical businesses. Definitely 10 years ago, that was not really happening. So if you wanted to, actually, it's funny the way that colors are used in order to, I say used, but they are used in order to do different things. So my favorite color is red. And at the start, I just used to wear it once in a while and I didn't care. But I actually found out, from business psychologists, they were like, yes, this is the color that you wear if you want attention, if you're an extrovert, you're quite loud. It'll be great for you because it'll get everybody in the room looking at you. I was like, I don't want to. I mean, for me, wearing red just makes me feel confident because it's my favorite color. And thank goodness, because I don't want everyone to turn around and look at me, but that's what was happening. So yeah, my wearing red to feel comfortable in that setting was wearing red to say, look at me, I'm here, I'm commanding attention. Peacock. I'm a peacock.
Yeah.
And different things like I've heard in other places saying that if you go into an interview wearing blue, particularly dark blues, it just projects some kind of intelligence. It basically increases your chances of getting hired by a lot. And that is something I know from friends in some schools that are well funded, especially private schools. That is something that they're told, and it passes down the line. They are told, wear navy blue
Wow.
suit, navy blue dress, and your chances of getting the job are a lot higher.
I'm going to bear that in mind when next time I'm hiring someone. Like, have I just hired them because they were wearing blue?
Yeah, and it's I don't know a lot about color theory, but there's definitely something about the whether it's biases or the traditions around those industries that just make people think that if you wear navy blue, somehow you're more trustworthy or going to be a better employee.
Hmm.
It's strange, but people should be aware of it. And some people do. They will play the game. They will just wear this particular color for the particular occasion, and it does work. So
Yeah.
I think,
I
color
mean,
theory is something people need to make themselves aware of as well, because we're still reacting to it. Even designers use it to design rooms. The color can affect your mood as well. So yeah, it is something to bear in mind, which I don't think a lot of people pay attention to.
no, not at all. And if you could change one thing about the tech culture at the moment, what would it be?
Oh gosh, this is a tough one. I think one thing that I definitely would change, I don't know how to put this, but I think in the efforts to get new people into the industry, something that I'm seeing probably far too much of is people kind of it's good to take talent from everywhere, but kind of picking talent from the same places or ignoring talent, wherever the business is based. And I'm seeing this only, in Manchester because I'm here. I've noticed this a lot with, a lot of businesses that say, yes, we know we want career changers. We want to get people in who've got some transferable skills, blah, blah, blah. But my question is, are you actually looking at the people who are maybe born here, bred here, go to university here, go to school here? And I'm wondering if that happens in other cities as well, because there are a lot of talented people on the ground, but maybe they just don't understand the jargon of what the job titles mean. They don't understand the jargon of what the tasks mean. So have you done a good enough job to translate it into plain English? Are you doing a good enough job of doing some outreach? Because, that's another, I guess, another facet of diversifying the population that work in. We need to look at diversity in the broader sense, but also just remember, if you're trying to make an industry boom in a particular city, don't forget the people who grew up there or who know the city really, really well. And I'm saying this because, I'm not from Manchester, but I came here for university. And I'm one of the very, very few people I know in my entire faculty who is still in Manchester. Half of them, I'm sure, either went to London or left immediately. That, it was a different time. It was a long time ago. But even today, we've got a lot to offer in this city, particularly, but we shouldn't be letting people go. There's nothing wrong with London, but we've got a lot to offer here. And I think probably the same happens with London. Like, people who are there, yes, there are loads of great opportunities, but how many actual Londoners are getting the opportunities that are on their doorstep? Yeah, that's some
Yeah.
big mistake. And I just worry when I see an office is opening in New York or it's opening wherever, in whichever city. I'm like, how many people in that city are you actually trying to employ or develop?
Yeah, I too am one of the people that stayed in Manchester after university. Not from Manchester, but decided to stay up there. And I am the only person that I know from my course that did that as well. So it hasn't changed. And the London brain drain is a real thing that cities across the UK feel. And the London point I think is interesting. And I'll be interesting to hear if anyone calls me out on this. But I don't know if there are any Londoners anymore. Like the generational Londoners that have been there for 50, 60 years, have their family ties there. I think there are, but I think those communities are being pushed out by the brain drain that then takes over.
Yeah.
So I think that's a microcosm. I think cities like Manchester, Sheffield, Newcastle need to do better at
Yeah.
supporting that local talent and investing in getting young people, everyone, any age, into jobs that are coming to those cities.
Yeah, I think that the sentiment is there. It's just when I know when I've sat in meetings recently, we're talking, and I have to at the end just remind everybody that we while we're cooking up all these schemes. By the way, are we speaking to anybody local? How many locals are actually on this call, and can we get somebody in if they're not? Whether they're working in or around the tech industry or not, we just need that local connection, because at the end of the day, if we don't, that's another thing that happens when you import people. They tend to speak or build their social circles around people who aren't from here as well necessarily. And it's just having that awareness of how many people actually you speak to are local and have got a connection to locals. And if that isn't the case, make an effort to reach out to them, because there's a lot going on. There are loads of talented people. And every time I tell someone, that I'm doing something and they're from Manchester and living in London or living elsewhere abroad, they're like, wow, I can't believe that was happening, or this is happening on my doorstep. I wouldn't have left if I'd known.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a part of it as well of when you're new to a city or you're finding yourself in a city, you put the effort in to find those opportunities, where if you grow up there, you don't necessarily look, you take it as the city you grew up in. I know I think that about where I grew up. I'm like, it's nothing there, it's boring, it's same old, same old. And it could have a thriving tech scene for all I know. So.
Very true, very true. You just made me think about where I grew up in North Wales, actually, and I rely on school friends still to know what's happening. I really don't know what's happening in the town. But yeah, it's very, very true.
And so I have one final question for you. So we named our business Honey Badger because they're fearless, powerful, and intelligent, and that feeds into our company culture. So if you were an animal, which one would you be and why?
Oh, gosh. I don't think I've ever had this question before. If I were an animal, I think I'm like an elephant, and it's because I don't do that much most of the time. I observe a lot, and I'm very calm. But once I get passionate about something, you can't stop me. And I've got a pretty good memory. But yeah, I'm like one of those animals that is just, very calm. But yeah, once you get me going, I'm very, very passionate. Yeah, I think. And it's the memories, because I remember, I tend to remember people and using that to build connections. Yeah, it's the memory thing for an elephant that I respect. So yeah, an elephant.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that was a great answer. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been so much fun.
So there we go. That's all for this episode of CultureCast. I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did recording. If you like this episode, feel free to visit thisishcd.com, where you can have access to our back catalogue of over 100 episodes, with episodes relating to service design, product management, design research, and much, much more. And if you want to get in touch with me or any of the guests, then you can find their details in the podcast show notes. Thank you, and have a great day.